So, but in any case. So let me give you a quick, if my friends can help me with this. Is it up? What do I need to do to get it up? Oh, here we go. So just as a way of doing a quick review, let me give you a quick summary or way to think about not just the film, but kind of more systems and data. So, and these are things we talked about. Some we emphasize more than others. So if you're thinking about how a complicated system might work, one of the things I look for are those three areas. One has to do with the level of energy and motivation that's kind of driving this, and you all picked that up. What's the big deal about the white hats? They were all wearing white hats. Is that important or not? It's important because? A sense of belonging, but it's also a very high status thing. It's a way into all these kind of buildings. It really is an important kind of idea. So there were, it's true they didn't have many alternatives, but I think the people who said they were motivated for things over and above that or highly committed kind of got it right. A second thing is it really is an incredibly interdependent, complex system. It's simple, I agree with that, but there's so many places for it to, for the coordination to fail, and it doesn't. And the last thing is kind of problem-solving mechanisms. So I look at that in terms of both proactive ones, which means how do I get the system better? And there were a lot of examples of that in the film. And the other kind of problem solving is reactive. Something went wrong, I got to fix it. So one of the things is to think about in this particular film or in others is those three processes. And then I'm going to fill in the triangle by kind of looking at individual level things. So there's a lot of individual things that are important. People were working with their families. People came from the same village. People had a job that had various kind of recognition. All those things are both affecting motivation, but if you all come from the same village, if you're working for someone in the family, that's going to heighten levels of coordination. They all owned their own business, so you could buy your own business. So there was a lot of reason for you to be entrepreneurial and think about different kinds of problem solving. Most organizations now are often group organized. They're made up of different kinds of groups. Well, this wasn't 4,000 individuals. These were 4,000 individuals that were members of small groups. And I've written a lot about groups and organizations, and if you get groups that are highly cohesive, they're really committed to each other, it's more powerful than anything any manager could ever do. Because if I've did some of the early studies on what are called self-designing or autonomous teams, if those teams get up and they're just incredibly powerful forces. So the groups are also a source for motivation. The fact that the money was shared meant that people were going to be not competitive, but more cooperative with each other. The supervisor played an important role. So there was a little section of the film of the supervisor going around kind of fixing things and getting things better. That was more on kind of reactive kind of problem solving. And then lastly, something that was mentioned by people in the back, there were a lot of organizational things going on. First of all, there was this common religious set of feelings, but remember I said don't get caught in that. It was really the fact that there was a shared set of values that people thought were important. It was a system that really helped the worker. So if you wanted to get married, or if you were sick, or if you needed a loan, you know, the organization was there to help you. We talked about the training system. You raised a good question about that. My notion is that it was still very important. So the training system is tied a lot to coordination. It's building a common set of beliefs about making things going. Why did they have the court system? Well, the court system is a good example of reactive problem solving. So there were two cases that we showed in the film. The first was, you know, this guy, his wife double was lost, and he wanted to do that, and that was one thing. Then there was a battle between two of the workers about whether they were stealing from each other. But there's a mechanism, and that mechanism was to some extent much more powerful than the police or some other government agency doing it. It was a system within the organization to do that. The president played an important role. He was very much involved in proactive problem solving. But the actually interesting point for you to think about is that stuff was going on at all three levels of analysis. So a lot of times in organizations we worry about, well, let's build some incentives for the individual, or let's build a group kind of thing. The interesting part of this one is that there are activities going at individual, group, and organizational levels that are all maximizing those three processes in the middle. More important is that the workers, the double wallas, think about the organization in terms of those three levels. I have my own customers I have to worry about. I'm part of a group, but it's very clear they think about themselves as part of an organization. I've been in a lot of different kind of organizations. Workers' views may be, well, I think about my job and that's it. But they were actually thinking about things in three different levels of analysis, and those three different levels of analysis were very important in what they were doing. You know, there are some other things that are relevant. The fact that it's a north-south city makes it easier, right? Because people lived in the north and they worked in the south, and the train system was very important. So there are kind of environmental things that, at least my view, and I've been to a lot of cities in the world, or even go to New York City, it's very hard to walk, 50 steps without finding a restaurant. You don't find that, at least in this city, I haven't found that. There are some restaurants, but not the proliferation that we think about. And then another important environmental thing here is that there was relatively low customer mobility. So it means if you learned where people were, doesn't mean that no one didn't move, but there was relatively kind of low mobility. But the interesting thing was there were both the double waller's responsibility for the customer and the fact that everybody else was responsible for the customer, which means everybody else needed to kind of collaborate with each other. So you picked up most of these points, and so the summary point is it's really a cool system. The Brazilian system is another really interesting one. We're going to do one about what are called shipbreakers, people who take these large ocean freighters and reduce them to strips of steel. And we're doing another film on what's called unusual work. But as far as the large-scale system ones, both this and the Brazilian one, this is one quick framework that you can use to think about it. So you raised a lot of good questions. As I always like doing this. It's more fun than just giving a talk by having you both watch the film and then engage you in a conversation. So we're on time. Thanks very much. It's very nice for you to come this evening. I appreciate your ideas and comments, and I hope you enjoyed the film. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
So that was the opening speech by Paul Goodman. I hope all of you enjoyed it. I just wanted to recognize our mayor from West Lafayette, Jan Mills, who attended the event with us. Thank you all for coming. Just to let you know, there should be a list of a whole bunch of talks tomorrow. Other than lunches and others which require registration. If you have some time, feel free to wander over to the South Ballroom over at the Union, and you can hear a number of talks focusing on both sustainable supply chains, corporate social responsibility, and so on. This is the goal of the Global Supply Chain Management Initiative is to expand the definition of what we mean by a supply chain. And I'm sure there will be a number of people in this room who have never thought of that term or didn't care about it. What I'm hoping is that Paul's documentary and the discussion surrounding it gets us to think about this a bit more in the abstract, because it's clear that you can talk about what he has here, drop the DW from there, and it's basically all the organizations we all sit in. So this might give us a moment of pause. So with that, Thank you very much for coming, and we look forward to seeing you at various other events. Thank you.